Hey everyone! Hey, Kai! Thank you so much, Kai. Let me give you 10 quick dabs because we got to start. They're actually harder than the regular dabs. They take way more of my energy. Let's get started with the lesson. In order to use the topic we're going to be learning today, you need to first know how to conjugate an action verb into a past tense adjective. Now that sounds harder than it is. Essentially what you do is you take an action verb stem and you're either going to attach un to the end if it ends with a consonant, or you're going to attach a nian if it ends in a vowel. There are a few exceptions. One is if you have this letter at the end of the verb stem, you remove it first, and then you just attach this because it'll be left with a vowel. Besides that, you're done. Then you attach good a. This is just the particle a, followed by the rest of the sentence. Often the sentence will end in the past tense, but there's no requirement for that. So what is this form? You're taking the action verb, so doing something, you're taking the past tense adjective form of an action verb. So if we take 하다, to do, we get 한 끝에. So past tense action. So in this case, having done something, 끝, meaning the finish or the end, the ending of something. And then the particle a, here meaning at. So the meaning we get is at the end of having done whatever action. So at the end of having done something. That's what this form literally translates to, and that's what this form means. Naturally, you can just translate this form as after doing something. So after 하다, 한 끝에, after doing, 먹은 끝에, after eating, like that. So this form is used when you're talking about the result of having done something. Literally, again, we're talking about at the end of having done something. So it's all finished. After everything's said and done, what is the result? That is the nuance of this form, is that you're talking about the result of something. So it's all over. What is at the very end of that action? We've done everything. Now it's over, and the end of that action is, this is what this form is used for. And it's also specifically used to emphasize that this action took a lot of time and effort. You're not going to say in Korean, after having done something that was easy with this form, because really what you're saying is at the end of all of that. So by saying this, you're emphasizing that all of that, it was something that took a lot of effort and a lot of time. So after all that had happened, at the end of all of that, implying that all of that took a lot of effort and time. So because of that, you can also think of this form sometimes as translating as something like after managing to do, though it won't always translate like this because it literally means at the end of having done something. It's often used, although it doesn't have to be, it's often used when the result was something good. Doesn't that kind of flow? After having done this long and arduous, difficult process, it took a lot of time, the result was we finally got something we wanted. This is how it often gets used. So this form is only used when it's just a regular action verb. You don't have to worry about negative action verbs with 지 않다 and stuff like that. It's just a regular action verb. So don't do like 하지 않다, just do 하다. So if you were to use a negative verb, it would sound like at the end of having not done something which took a lot of time and effort, right? It doesn't really make sense. So this is not a form you're going to be just using when you're chatting with your friends. It's not going to be a form you're going to hear in your regular conversations. It's more common that you're going to hear this when someone's narrating something, like they're telling a story, but you're not going to hear it in just your everyday conversations. If you just want to say after doing something, just use any of the other after forms that you have in Korean, like 후에 or 고, like 하고. And since this form, I said, uses a action verb past tense adjective form, there is also another past tense adjective form with 던, which also makes a past tense adjective form of an action verb. So if you see this form used with this, it's the same thing. The speaker is just conveying it as something that they personally experienced. We actually have two forms to cover today that are using 끝에. So before we go on to the next form, I'm going to give you a few example sentences. 이것은, this thing, this is 제가 20년, 20 years 연구하다, to research, 끝에. So at the end of researching 20 years, 만들다, to make, 만든 음료. So a drink that I made. Note, this is the same past tense adjective form of an action verb, just with the verb 만들다. This is the regular usage of it before a noun. So a drink that I made. 에요, it is. So this is a drink that I made, 제가. So after having researched 20 years. So this is a drink that I made after having researched 20 years. This implies that the researching process was long and took a lot of effort. And after having researched for 20 years, has the nuance of what comes after is going to be something positive, in which case it is. 만든 음료. So this is a drink that after 20 years of research, I made. So it took me 20 years and I made it. And you drink, you're like, pfft. 5번, so 5 times. 전화하다, so to phone call 끝에. So at the end of having called 5 times to a company or whoever, the result was that 연결 is connection. 연결이 되다 is the passive version of to connect. So to be connected. So I was connected at the end of having phone called them 5 times is what you literally get. Or 5번을 전화한 끝에 연결이 됐어요 can also translate more naturally as after calling 5 times, I was connected. 5번을 전화한 끝에 연결이 됐어요. 30켤레. So 켤레 again would be a pair. In this case, it's a pair of shoes. 신발. 신어보다, to try on your feet. 신다, to put on your feet. 끝에. So at the end of having tried on 30 pairs of shoes, the result was 딱, just, 맞다, to fit or to be right, to be correct. So in this case, the perfect fitting 신발 찾았어요. So I found perfect fitting shoes after having tried on 30 pairs. By using 끝에, it implies that you did a lot of work. You've put a lot of time, a lot of effort. In this case, 30 pairs. You tried on 30 pairs of shoes and you finally, it kind of feels like you're saying finally, right? Even though there is no word finally in the sentence, if you translate this to I finally found, you'd be correct because it has that kind of nuance. It took a lot of work to do this, and then I found the right shoes. It works, but it kind of sounds more natural if you add the word finally in there in English. So if you add finally to your sentences, it can kind of help convey the nuance that this form has. 30켤레 신발을 신어본 끝에 딱 맞는 신발을 찾았어요. Don't underestimate this form, okay? I know it looks simple. I promise you there's more to it. You take a noun, okay? And then you add, after that with a space, you add 끝에. And that's all you do. Yes, this exact same form is more often used just after a noun like this. No conjugation, and that's all you have to do. What nouns is this used with? Well, it can really be any noun. It tends to get used with 한자 nouns, any sort of word that normally would use like 하다 after it. So you can make the exact same sentence we did. Instead of saying 연구한 끝에, like after having researched, you can just say 연구 끝에, the end of researching. The meaning is the same. So you don't have to do any conjugation. And this one's more common. Now, I don't mean that it's common, but that it's more common than the other one. So I'm going to give you an example. This sentence is actually a common expression, so you can write it down and learn it as is. 고생 끝에 낙이 온다. 고생. 고생 is like suffering. So normally it's used in the word 고생하다, literally to suffer or to put in a lot of effort into doing something. 끝에. So at the end of suffering, 낙. 낙 is like joy. 낙이 온다. Joy comes at the end of suffering. You can translate this several different ways, but you might say something like, every cloud has a silver lining. After hardships come joy. 고생 끝에 낙이 온다. So you put in a lot of work into something really hard, and then you get joy out of it. 10번의 실패 끝에. So at the end of 10번, 10 times, 실패, failure. So at the end of 10 failures, the result was, it implies that something good happened. 드디어. Here, this sentence actually does use the word finally. 성공했어요. So we succeeded. We were successful finally at the end of 10 failures. After the 10th failure, I finally succeeded. 10번의 실패 끝에 드디어 성공했어요. So I finally succeeded after 10 failures. 저희는, this is the polite version of 우리. So 저희는, so us, 상의, discussion, 끝에. So after discussing it, 함께 together 유학하다 to go as a foreign exchange student. 가기로 했다 to decide to go. So 가기로 했어요. So we decided to go abroad as foreign exchange students together after talking about it. 저희는 상의 끝에 함께 유학을 가기로 했어요. So after discussion, we decided to go study abroad together. 저희는 상의 끝에 함께 유학을 가기로 했어요. And that is our lesson. 그럼 다음에 또 봐.